Hi everyone, welcome to English Digest. I am Pat.
And I am Kat.
So we're looking at our Newswatch unit for this month, and one of the two articles we've got is about artificial intelligence.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about artificial intelligence? Well, like most people, I think I kind of have complicated feelings about it.
Right.
On one hand, I think it's really, really useful and it's amazing what machines can do these days. On the other hand, it is a little bit scary and lots of science fiction writers have written stories about what could go wrong if artificial intelligence gets too powerful.
That is true. Do you think any of those are realistic?
Some of them.
We're all going to be controlled by a computer?
Maybe not completely, but it could be that, certain aspects of our lives are more beholden to being controlled by a computer, even if it's not, completely. Because, people want safeguards, but I think human error happens a lot, and there might be places where we don't realize something bad is happening until it's already too late.
Okay, so we're not thinking we're going to turn into the Matrix anytime soon, but it's still a bit of an area. So We're going to start off by talking a little bit about artificial intelligence and its uses. We've then got a second story about what the Vatican has recently done with a guide that's not made many people happy.
Exactly. It's a guide on gender and sexuality, which seems like something that the Vatican would not typically be writing about. But with all the discussions going on around that these days, I think, as a church body, they wanted to kind of put their opinion out there.
Yeah, this is what we say.
Yeah, and so a lot of people are unhappy with that, and we're going to find out why.
Yeah, we'll talk about what that is and why, but let's start by reading through the articles. Worries grow over how we might use artificial intelligence. A recent survey by a technology think tank showed an alarming trend. Significant numbers of people are quitting the artificial intelligence, AI, industry over ethical concerns. Of the AI workers polled, 59% reported they had seen potentially harmful decision-making take place, and 27% of those then quit their jobs as a result. These numbers show the growing concern that many people have over how AI is being used. As AI becomes more sophisticated, choices about how to apply it become more critical. Used without limits, AI has the potential to diminish people's freedoms and threaten our safety. Though people expect governments to keep pace with developments in technology, many say that the AI industry isn't regulated closely enough. To fix this, experts are calling on AI companies to keep their processes transparent and be willing to work with governments and citizens to make sure AI is being used responsibly. Canada and the European Union have also released sets of guidelines to help steer the use of AI in a direction that's beneficial to everyone.
Vatican releases controversial guide on gender and sexuality. In a move that caused uproar throughout the global LGBTQ community, the Vatican released a guide to help Catholic schools address what the Church terms an educational crisis in gender and sexuality. The document, titled Male and Female He Created Them, aims to counter ideas common in modern gender studies. The document outlines the Catholic Church's view of human behavior based on traditional mother and father roles in families. It also calls non-binary or third gender identities fictitious, stating they complicate matters of sexual identity. LGBTQ Catholic organization New Ways Ministry criticized the document, saying it could especially cause great harm to LGBTQ teens who are at much higher risk of suicide. Jesuit priest Reverend James Martin said that the document's call for discussion of the issue is right, but that its content ignores the experiences of LGBTQ people and will likely be used as a weapon against transgender people. As the Vatican is such a widely influential body, many Catholics are looking to see whether it adopts a more tolerant stance on this subject over time.
Okay, so there are our two articles. We're going to start with the one about artificial intelligence. So people are getting worried, and there's some basis for this worry. We're going to start off with some statistics, something that's been found out, which is a recent survey by a technology think tank, and this survey showed an alarming trend. A think tank is basically a group of people, kind of experts or with a lot of knowledge about an area, who get together and just kind of discuss it, and maybe then will publish an opinion or a paper or advise a government body about something. They'll kind of research and draw conclusions.
Right. So sometimes they're academic and sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they're more like politically affiliated.
Yes.
Seems like this one is probably made up of people who do research in the technology industry.
Yeah, people who've worked in the tech industry for a long time. And what the survey showed is that significant numbers, so lots of people, are quitting the AI industry over ethical concerns. So ethical means related to what's right or what's wrong, and kind of knowing about the kind of moral principles that people follow when they decide what's right and what's wrong.
Right. Well, and I think there's a little bit of a difference between moral and ethical.
That's right.
Morals and ethics. It seems like morals is about more what is right and wrong, whereas ethics is more about what will or will not hurt people. Would you say that's true?
I would think of it as the moral principles are what guides a person, and the ethics is more like the study of moral principles.
Okay.
Something like that.
I guess everybody has a different
Yeah,
take
there
on
are
it.
slightly different definitions. Basically, what we're talking about is ethical concerns. They think that what's being done is wrong. They think it's going to cause harm to people. What's going on is not following human rights and stuff like that.
Yeah. So now we get to these numbers that they found out through this survey. So it says of the AI workers polled, 59% reported they had seen potentially harmful decision-making take place, and 27% of those then quit their jobs as a result. So they gave a survey to a bunch of different people working in the AI industry, and 59% of those people said that they'd seen their bosses or their managers or other people in their departments maybe making decisions that could hurt people. Yeah, and then out of that 59%, 27% of those quit their jobs because they felt unethical stuff was going on.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm sure a lot of those who saw it but didn't quit their jobs, they're still probably pretty unhappy about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But their life circumstances, the money they owe, or the families they need to take care of, or whatever, mean they can't just kind of up and quit like that.
Right. It's often harder to quit a job than it is to stay in it.
Yes, exactly. So what do we mean by potentially?
Well, potentially would be kind of like probably. Like it could happen. It doesn't mean that it will happen.
Yeah, it allows for the possibility, really.
Yes.
Okay, well, so those numbers, so 6 out of 10 people saying, yeah, we've seen some strange and bad stuff happening, and, nearly 3 out of 10 or whatever saying like that it made me quit.
Yep.
These numbers show the growing concern that many people have over how AI is being used. So when, a large chunk of the people who work in that industry are saying, I can't work there anymore, this stuff it's going in a wrong direction, I don't like it. That's not just sort of 1 or 2. This is quite a few.
Yeah, definitely. So there, it's showing that there's actually quite a bit of concern about how AI is being used. So, of course, now we're going to talk about why people are concerned about that. So, as AI becomes more sophisticated, choices about how to apply it become more critical. And when we say it's sophisticated, that means, well, sophisticated can have a couple of different meanings. It could be like very polished and worldly, and, like if you're a sophisticated person, you're probably very fashionable and intelligent.
Kind of highly cultured.
And well-educated and that sort of thing. But as for things that are sophisticated, that means they are highly developed. So AI is becoming more and more developed, and it's becoming more and more detailed and
more
capable
complex.
of different things. Yeah.
Any kind of apps and computer systems, everything we've got that's kind of technology-based is always becoming more sophisticated. It's becoming smarter, better, faster, can do more things.
Yeah.
So, but what do we do now that we've got these systems? Well, used without limits, AI has the potential to diminish people's freedoms and threaten our safety. So potential there is the noun form of potentially, the adverb we used in the previous paragraph. The word diminish means to make something less or to make something smaller. So it could reduce people's freedoms, give them less freedom, mean they can't do anything they want online because it's going to either be seen or possibly stopped by these AI programs. They'll say, no, I don't want you posting that. You've posted that, so I'm going to tell the government, that kind of thing. And so that stops people being free. And it also threatens their safety because, people will react to those kinds of things.
Exactly. I think of countries where they are using facial recognition in public places, like they're starting to do that in China, and I think the UK is contemplating it. Oh, gosh, I am so sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, China, we know, has got, various things that search out what people post, kind of block stuff that they don't want people posting.
And they can recognize people's faces.
Yeah, and there's kind of the idea of people having social credit. So if they do something the government doesn't agree with, they get penalized. And if they do things the government does agree with, they might get a cheaper house sometime down the line.
Yeah, and a lot of that is driven by AI.
Yeah, the computer programs can recognize all this stuff. So that's the problem.
Yeah, so apparently, though people expect governments to keep pace with developments in technology, many say that the AI industry isn't regulated closely enough. Okay, so here we're talking about, what do we expect of our government? How do we expect them to know what's going on in the AI industry? So, it depends on what the government's goal is. If they want to control people more, then maybe they're okay with less regulation. But if they want people to have more freedom, then they might want to make some rules.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah? So they're supposed to keep pace with these developments. What does that mean?
Well, that means if there's there's a new development in the technology, the government needs to kind of immediately know what's going on, decide whether it needs any kind of rule or law or regulation about it, and enact that law before anything gets out of hand or before the AI is used badly. So if you keep pace with something, you're kind of going at the same speed as it. So if two runners are going and are keeping pace with each other, they're basically running at about the same speed. They both speed up and slow down at the same time.
Right.
So governments should really be trying to know what's new, what's coming in technology, and how do we make sure it's being used safely. But some people say it's not regulated enough.
Yeah, so regulating something or making regulations, if you want to use the noun form, is basically making rules that can restrict how it's used and restrict what it can do. So, businesses are typically regulated because the government doesn't want them to be able to take advantage of the laws to steal from people or make unfair prices.
Do what they want, lie about what their products can do, all of that kinds of thing.
Yeah, so AI, it's a pretty new industry, so regulations may not be that strong yet.
Yeah, because it's difficult for, lawmakers. They don't have the technology background, so they don't understand as much about what is needed, what do these things do, what can they be used for. They can only make laws about what they're told.
Right.
And this kind of brings us to the next problem. To fix this, experts are calling on AI companies to keep their processes, both okay, transparent, and be willing to work with governments and citizens to make sure AI is being used responsibly. Now, something that's transparent, if you think of a material, that just means you can see through it. It's clear. What we mean in terms of companies or even governments being transparent is that they tell people exactly what they are doing. You can kind of see the decisions they made. They're being written down. All their research is available. Where they get their money from is available. And it's just kind of freely public information. It'd be like Apple saying, this is what we're making, this is what we're developing next, and we're going to tell you everything is out there. We're not keeping anything secret.
Right, yeah, or making sure that people can ask questions and understand about exactly what's going on and that you're going to give them a truthful answer.
Exactly. So we're saying companies have to be honest about this is what AI can do, this is what we're currently using it for, and yes, it could be used for this. And these are the things you might want to make laws about.
Right. Yeah, so they want to make sure that governments and companies are kind of working together. And a couple of different countries or groups have already started working towards this. So it says Canada and the European Union have also released sets of guidelines to help steer the use of AI in a direction that's beneficial to everyone. So it sounds like they are starting to not regulate, but sort of guide different AI companies or the AI industry in a direction that's going to help people rather than hurt people.
Exactly, yeah. Guideline or a set of guidelines would be, they're not quite rules, but if you don't follow them, then the government will be allowed to, maybe shut you down, or they will investigate further and make sure they know what's going on. It's basically saying if you don't follow this, then there will be some kind of consequence. And the guidelines will say things like, it should do this, it must do this, it should not do this, it definitely can't do this, and so on. And it'll just tell people what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Right. So, I mean, you won't get arrested or anything like that for not following guidelines, but they're basically kind of telling you what's recommendations, what's good to do, what's not good to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and they're helping to steer the use of AI or the AI industry. Well, steering, literally as a verb, means to, like, kind of, if you're in a car for say, like, you turn the wheel, your car turns right if you turn right. You turn left, it turns left.
You control the direction of something's movement.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're talking about here in a more metaphorical sense. So if you steer something, it means you're controlling the way that it moves.
Yeah, or controlling the direction, in this case, that AI is going. So we can go, okay, let's make sure it's being used to help people, not to control people, to spy on people, whatever.
Yes.
Okay, well, that is the end of our first story in our News Watch for this month. We're going to take a short break now, and then we'll come back with the second one.
All right, we are back, and we are going to do the second part of our Newswatch articles today. And so we talked about AI previously, and we are now going to talk about something that's a little bit opposite. It's not so much about technology, but it's about society and religion. It's about the Vatican. So,
the Vatican. So the Vatican is a kind of small, mostly independent city in Rome.
Country.
Yes,
in Rome.
country in Rome. But we often use it to mean the Catholic Church, which is the organized body of a decent amount of the Christian religion.
Right. So the Vatican, you could say, is kind of the government of the Catholic Church, I guess.
Yes, you would. It's where the Pope lives, and it's the Pope's government, the people he gets to do stuff, the leaders of the Catholic Christian Church.
Yes. So the most powerful people in the church, and they make all the guidelines for what the Catholic Church should be doing, what Catholic doctrine says to believe or not to believe, or what to do, that sort of thing. And a lot of people, like billions, I think, billions of people are Catholic in the world. So they're all looking to this organization to see what they should be doing. And so that's why this is a really important article. So they released a controversial guide on gender and sexuality. And when we say the word controversial, we mean it's kind of split down the middle in terms of how people feel about it. Like, not everybody likes it, and a lot of people actually really, really dislike it.
Yeah, it's causing strong reactions on both sides. So what were they? Well, we see in a move that caused uproar throughout the global LGBTQ community, the Vatican released a guide to help Catholic schools address what the Church terms an educational crisis in gender and sexuality. So the word controversial is kind of reflected in the move caused uproar.
Yeah.
If something causes uproar, it causes a lot of people to feel very strongly and usually angry about something. An uproar is a really loud sound. There's a kind of a group of people going like, "Wow, how dare you!" all at once. And so that can be used slightly less literally to mean a lot of people reacting in a very strong way. Maybe they're not shouting, but they're going online, they're talking about it, they're complaining, they're sending letters saying, "I disagree with this," and so on.
Exactly. So they are talking in this guide about the LGBTQ community, and those letters stand for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning. So it's basically sexual minorities.
Yes.
Yep. So they released a guide to help Catholic schools. So it's addressed and sent out to all the Catholic schools in the world to address an educational crisis, or what they call an educational crisis.
So what are the Catholic school teachers supposed to tell their children, their students in the schools?
How should I tell my kids about people who are gays, basically?
That kind of thing. And so that will cover kind of it's sort of like the church's official position as well. It sort of reflects what they want to believe, what they will say, and their overall opinion on these issues.
The document, titled Male and Female He Created Them, aims to counter ideas common in modern gender studies. So talking about male and female, of course you have binary, which means two opposite genders. And the document aims to counter some certain ideas that you see in gender studies, which is like studying, what is gender, what does it mean, what do people of different genders look like or do.
How that's affected by different cultures around the world.
Right.
The science, the genetics that goes into it, all sorts of different ideas. So to counter something means to speak or act in opposition to something.
Right.
So someone does one thing and you say, I disagree, and this is my opinion, and this will kind of sort of fight back against it, argue against it. So modern gender studies is kind of saying one thing, and the church is kind of saying, no, that's wrong, this is our opinion, and that's what people should follow.
Yeah. The document outlines the Catholic Church's view of human behavior based on traditional mother and father roles in families. So basically, if you know the background of the Catholic Church, they like to say that every family should be made up of a mother who's female and a father who is male, and they should not get divorced, and they should, have
children.
Have lots of children, ideally. And, that's the traditional family. That's the good version of family. Everything else is kind of like not as good.
Yeah, everything else is not proper because it's not following this particular model. So it's as well as saying, so that's what it should be, they're also calling non-binary or third gender identities fictitious, and they're stating that they complicate matters of sexual identity. So Kat mentioned binary being kind of the two possible outcomes, male, female in this case. Non-binary is kind of saying, well, there are more than two genders possible.
Right.
Third genders, people who are both genders at once, people who have transitioned between the genders, and all the other different things in that large spectrum.
Yeah, it's a novel idea to some people that you can be less male or less female or more female, but not be 100% either.
Right. Now, I grew up at school. There was a young boy in my brother's grade who it was clear from the age of about 6 or 7 onwards that this boy was actually a girl.
Oh, okay.
Like everything about him, the way he acted, spoke, the things he wanted to do was, you would call it traditionally female.
Okay.
And so he had a fairly tough time of it at school.
Yeah.
This was in the 1980s. Things weren't quite as kind of modern and liberal as they are now. But when he grew up, he changed. So his
he transitioned.
He transitioned.
Okay.
So he had an operation so that now he is female physically as well as on the inside.
Although she is female.
Exactly, yes. Because I knew him as Darren, so it kind of sticks with that. And so, but yeah, she is now a lot happier.
So, we'll talk about that later on. That experience is transgender.
But the church is saying this is fictitious. Fictitious is the adjective form of fiction. We could also say similar to fictional. It just means it's made up. It's not true.
Yeah.
It's something that's created like a story.
Interesting. I mean, if it is a story, it's a story that a lot of people are living in their daily lives. And the Vatican also said that these identities, these third gender non-binary identities, complicate matters of sexual identity, which means that they, rather than keeping things simple, they make them more difficult to navigate or difficult to figure out or difficult to talk about.
Yeah, there's not an easy yes, no, A, B answer, basically.
And I guess they would like it to be that way.
Okay, so there is a Catholic organization for LGBTQ people. It's called New Ways Ministry. So within the church, and so religious believers, but who oppose this, they criticize this document, saying it could especially cause great harm to LGBTQ teens who are at a much higher risk of suicide. So they're saying this guideline is going to make teens question who they are, what they are. Is this world going to accept me for who I am?
Or say that it's not going to.
And if not, then why live in it kind of thing. So it's dangerous. It could cause people to become hurt or dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was another person who disagreed with it, who was a Jesuit priest. Now, the Jesuits are kind of like the academic branch of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, they are the Society for Jesus is their name.
Yeah, so his name is Reverend James Martin, and Reverend is like a position of being a leader of a particular church.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he said that the document's call for discussion of the issue is right, but that its content ignores the experiences of LGBTQ people and will likely be used as a weapon against transgender people. There's a lot in this sentence, but let's start by saying the call for discussion. So in the document, they actually do say, like, we should discuss these issues more, like there should be more than one kind of opinion welcome.
Which is great, which is right, and which is something that should be done.
Yeah, absolutely. At any point for any issue, people should be discussing it freely. But to discuss something, you have to have the right facts. So the content of the document, which means the things that are in it, ignores LGBTQ people's experiences. Like I said, if these third gender identities or transgender identities are fictitious, that means that a lot of people are living as what the Catholic Church says is a fiction.
Yeah, a story. It's made up. So, and therefore, the problem is if this document says these people are living lies, their stories are just made up, it's all in their heads, then people will use this as a weapon against transgender people. They're saying, well, the church says you're making all this up.
Right.
This can't be possible. So the content, as Kat said, what's in the document is going to be bad.
Yes. So, yeah, discussions need to be managed carefully, especially when it involves people's identities. Yeah. As the Vatican is such a widely influential body, though, many Catholics are looking to see whether it adopts a more tolerant stance on this subject over time. So, being an influential body, not literally meaning like a person's body, but a body is, a large
group, an organization,
Yeah, exactly. So, what are we talking about with a tolerant stance?
Well, a stance is a person's attitude. It's how they view an issue. It's how they argue for or against a particular issue. And so it's their kind of point of view, basically, towards it. So we're saying whether the Catholic Church, will be more tolerant and say, no, this is true. There are third gender and multiple other gender people. Their experiences are valid. And, homosexual love is valid. It's all valid, and we will tolerate it, allow it to exist, and give support.
Right. And that would be, a really nice thing for a lot of people.
Yep.
Particularly young people who are questioning their identities, trying to find out who they are. And they need adults to kind of tell them that it's okay to be who they are.
They need people to understand them and to let them be what they are and let them kind of figure things out and guide them in that process.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, as we synchronize on that final word of this article, it's time to bring today's episode of English Digest to an end.
Okay.
Thank you very much for listening, everyone. For ED, I am Pat.
And I am Kat.
We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
See you soon.